Lovely. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rachel Newberry. I am the program director at Riot. If you're new here, welcome to the Riot Lunch and Learn series, where we showcase our awesome partners who are doing things across IoT. If you are unfamiliar with Riot, we are a 501c3 nonprofit focused on economic development in emerging technology areas. And we're the largest and most active IoT network. So we're excited to introduce you to one of our great partners today, Innovation Orange. Pete Harris is with us, and we also have Ken Runkles on the line. And I hear that Pete is going to be covering a nice variety of topics today in cybersecurity. And with that, I will hand it off to you, Pete. Thanks so much for being here.
Awesome. Thanks, Rachel. Appreciate the introduction. Happy afternoon for everybody. Hopefully it's in the afternoon. So as Rachel said, my name is Pete Harris, Director of Cybersecurity Services and Trusted Advisor with Innovation Orange. My background is primarily, I spent about 15 years kind of on the offensive side, doing adversary emulation and red teaming and things like that for the federal government and Department of Defense. Over the past 3 years, I've kind of transitioned, although I still do some of that work, but also transition into the incident response, threat hunt, kind of the other side of things. So what we wanted to present today for the Riot folks and partners and everybody who's attending is really just kind of a high level summary of things that we've started to see in the environment or in the industry as far as incidents, ransomware, the impact mostly, especially in regards to small businesses and kind of the transition that started to really kind of take hold over the past couple of years. So as we go through here, like Rachel said, please, we definitely want questions. This does not go really deep, so there may be questions that we're not covering in here, but I'm more than happy to discuss those during or at the end, as Rachel said. So we'll go ahead and get started. Get my clicker here. So again, we're going to the topics we're going to kind of go over, and again, kind of brush over the whole incident response and incident preparedness, and most importantly, some things that you guys can do or your companies can do to kind of prepare and things that you need to think about that, unfortunately, especially in the small business world, a lot of them don't think of these things until it's too late, and then it becomes, more of a problem. So we're going to cover, talking about the threat and some of the changes that have happened over the past couple of years, especially as it's impacting small businesses. Discussing a little bit of, the compliance and regulation requirements that are starting to come out. As everybody's probably aware, there's a lot of new laws and regulations and reporting requirements and things like that as ransomware attacks and cyber attacks have become more predominant across the country. Some of the states are taking a very proactive approach. The federal government's trying to push stuff out that is across the board. And we'll kind of talk through some of those things. And then we'll kind of get into some of the due diligence, just the basics, some of the things that, companies can do themselves without having to, hire anybody or, go out and spend money or anything like that. Where to start especially as a small business, but quite frankly, even mid-size and larger businesses. Talk about an incident response plan, what that is, what that actually means. Talk a little bit about cyber insurance and the legal side of incident response and cyber attacks and cyber insurance and what's going on in that world right now. And then we'll talk a little bit about the different types of incidents and then ransomware impacts, and then provide a few resources, not a tremendous amount, but a few key resources that anybody can go out that's free, available, that helps people prepare for these type of unfortunate events. Most importantly, please ask questions. We want to have some fun here. This is, not supposed to be, just sit here and listen to me talk. We definitely want questions. We want this to be interactive. We want to have this kind of as a casual conversation. So like we talked about, the threat is real, especially even for small businesses. For so long, what I generally hear from, especially small businesses, and I'm talking, 1 and 2 person companies up to, 25, 50 person companies, you hear about in the news all over the place, Colonial Pipeline and the healthcare, the hospitals and things like that. What you don't hear about is all the small businesses that, that have suffered the same types of impact, but have a lot less resources and a lot less financial support to be able to overcome some of these, especially in the ransomware group. Just in the past couple of years, there's been about a 424%, and that number does vary depending on, where you get that statistic, but they all end up being in the 400+% of cyber attacks against small businesses. And we're talking, 200% or less type of companies. There's reports, again, out over 60% of these small businesses, which is, hundreds of thousands of small businesses suffered some type of cyber attack. Not always ransomware, it could have been a multitude, and we'll talk about the different types of cyber attacks, but 60%, over half. Right now, most of the ransomware groups, if anybody's been tracking, is for a long time, they were pretty much going after the big money, the Colonial Pipelines, the hospitals, the government, places like that. What they realize is that gets a lot of attention from the federal government, specifically in the DOJ world, with the FBI getting involved and, and other agencies and organizations on there. So what the transition that we've seen over the past couple of years is going after what they're calling, the low hanging fruit, the smaller companies that have less security, have less, are easier to potentially compromise, and go after that, and going after the small dollars. Often just in 2022, we saw the most where they're just going after credit card size purchases, ransomware. So instead of the, we want $500,000, we want $5 million, we want $10 million. Now they're going, we want $20,000, we want $25,000, we want $10,000. And they're going after that because they can be easily just paid, and they're doing it in abundance and going for volume instead of, the high level targets. For small businesses, the average ransom is down to about $5,900, which is great, right? As you think about it, compared to hundreds of thousands of dollars and things like that. However, there's a lot of costs that are not. That's just to get access to your data back is the $5,900. And that's an average, again, across, 1 and 2 person companies. And for, 1, 2, 3 person companies, even $5,900 can be hugely impactful, especially if it's a startup company or something like that. And we'll talk about some of the true costs that are behind, these types of attacks as well. Downtime alone, we're talking $200,000-$300,000+. So you add the $5,900, which is why the ransomware groups are targeting such small ransoms, because the impact of downtime, it's a lot easier for you to pay $6,000 and get your stuff back and only have 2 or 3 days of downtime versus having a month of downtime or 45 days or 60 days or longer, and starting to have to, account for hundreds of thousands of dollars, which again can be, unfortunately, we've seen multiple companies go out of business just over even a small ransomware attack like this. Not to mention what it does to the reputation of the company, their partners, their vendors, and everything that falls in line with that. And then, another survey that was conducted, about 51% of small business owners don't really have any cybersecurity practices in place. They might have, some antivirus on their desktops or their laptops, but they don't have any of those other things that, the larger companies or the organizations that are more, have more financial stability or have more resources can provide. So how do we address that? How do small businesses, they can't put thousands and thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of dollars into cybersecurity if they're a $50,000 a year company to start. So how does that impact, and how do we address that, and how can they help themselves? So we talk about compliance and regulatory requirements. So in the small businesses, you primarily have 5 classifications of data that require and have regulatory requirements in here. You have, if you maintain any type of personally identifiable information, so anything that can be attributed to a person. Sorry about this. I'm just going to scroll through here. I guess I didn't take that out of the slides. Any type of personal data. So if you're collecting people's, their names, their addresses, their phone numbers, that's personally identifiable information, let alone security or social security numbers or credit card numbers or anything like that. As you start to transition, now you're getting into payment card industry. So PCI type of data. You have personal health if you're tied any way, shape, or form into the healthcare system, or any organization that's tied, even indirectly to a healthcare organization. There's potential that you have PHI. The federal government is now pushed out for anybody doing federal contracts. You have, everybody's probably, if you are in that world, you have heard CMMC, 800-171, you've heard these things. That's all about your controlled unclassified information. So information that's sensitive, it's not deemed classified, but it is sensitive to your company or the or the federal government or the contract that you're on. And how do you manage that data? And then credential data. This starts to get into usernames, passwords, PINs, any type of login, authentication type of information or anything like that. So if you've got an application that you're providing to your customer, or you've got a vast network of IoT devices that have logins and things that you are actually, you are storing in any way, shape, or form, there are regulatory requirements on how that's being stored, how you're managing it, how you're backing up, how you're protecting it. So these things are all things that kind of come into play, and they kind of provide an umbrella around, due diligence that we'll talk about in a little bit. And what are you doing to understand that you have this information? How are you protecting it? And how is that impacting the rest of your environment? And that gets very complicated in a world that we live in now, which is so much remote work. And so, so many people were, the days of having the server in the storage, the server closet, and it's all protected there, and there's key card access, and only 2 people have physical access to it. Those days are dwindling, as we all work from home, from our laptops, our personal computers, corporate computers, things like that. Due diligence. These are specific things out of a cyber insurance questionnaire. If you are asked, or you try to obtain cyber insurance from an insurance company, these are just basic questions that are generally asked, and you have to fill out. Now, some insurance companies have a 10-page form with a lot more questions, but these are some of the basic questions that you have to be able to answer. Multi-factor authentication is probably arguably one of the biggest security implementations and requirements that's going across basically all industries right now. And you probably have witnessed that even in your personal lives with, logging into your bank or anything like that, starting to require or allowing you to set up multi-factor authentication. Talking about your backups, on-site, off-site, where are they stored? How do you protect those? How can you recover? Do you test your backups? Do you test your recovery plan? When was the last time you saw, oh, okay, I went ahead and I restored something successfully? What I have found, and this has unfortunately happened more times than not, is companies, they back everything up. They have backup solution. They have an offsite backup. They do all the right things. And then when something happens, they go to restore and find out one of 2 things. One, the backups are one of 3 things. Sorry, the backups have been compromised because the bad actors, especially in the ransomware, they go after the backup specifically. 2, the backups are corrupt. They can't be restored. They haven't been tested, and there's a problem. Or the third aspect of it is, oh my God, we back up so much stuff. What do I restore? And it's going to take me 12 days just to be able to pull my offsite backups and to get them to, to a usable state. Talk about firewalls, endpoint protections. Do you have callback verification? This is huge if you are in the legal financial industry specifically, I just finished up a huge impersonation attack with a law firm where they are going after and they're compromising email accounts, and they're intercepting essentially settlement emails, and they're impersonating the attorneys, and they're redirecting wire transfers and settlement payments to to other accounts that aren't where they're supposed to go. So again, when we talk about phishing emails and things like that are very predominant, having little things like, hey, for payment, if you're requesting payment, is there a verification process that the person on the other end of that email is actually that person? Because that is a huge attack vector that I have seen really get pretty substantial over the past 6 or 8 months, specifically, not that it hasn't been going on longer. And then, is anybody monitoring systems? Not from a, what are you doing, making sure you're not going to bad websites and things like that, but from a, activity standpoint, to be able to catch or detect any type of suspicious activity that's going on, to be able to stop it quickly, as opposed to, even if you haven't prevented it, being able to have the ability to detect it or have somebody detect it, and how do you respond to that? And then common things like remote desktop and remote access into your environment. How is that secured? How is that tested? What tools are you using to do that? And then really establish policies and procedures. There's a lot of them, depending on the size or the industry, size of your company or the industry. But the basics right now, just the bare minimum, having an incident response plan, having some sort of onboarding, offboarding, where you kind of outline what, how do you, if somebody leaves the company, what are those processes to make sure those accounts are shut down or disabled but still monitored? How do you get your equipment back? How do you protect your data? How do you verify that any of your data that may fall into one of those previous categories, doesn't get out there, by, either on purpose or inadvertently when somebody leaves? Acceptable use. This is a huge one, and I'll give you the basics. The basic reason for it is a lot of people use their work emails for outside of work logins. For example, we do a lot of these these open source intelligence on organizations, and find when we go across, you guys all hear that LinkedIn got breached and somebody dumped the database of all the users and passwords, or pick your application or your tool. And more times than not, what we find is when we go into those databases and we look at who's been compromised or what accounts have been compromised, we find that people are using their email accounts for things like MyFitnessPal, or other their Evite that they use for personal use and things like that, and that inadvertently provides a risk back to the company. So having an acceptable use policy, so your employees, your staff understands when they should use their work email and when they shouldn't use your email. And most importantly nowadays with remote work is the bring your own device policies. And this very much ties in your bring your own device policies and an IoT policy, very much, can be very much part of the same policy, because they kind of fall in the same line. And then asking yourself the question, if you lost everything data-wise, can you recover within 10 days? That is a question that cyber insurance companies do ask. How long do you think it would take for you to recover? Applications are generally, it depends on it's the terrible answer to all of the questions that get asked in cybersecurity. It depends. Applications that are hosted by Microsoft, Google, these large companies are generally much more secure inherently, because you are inheriting a security posture of a company, an organization that has a very robust set of resources and security platforms that you inherit and you get, as opposed to you trying to stand up on your own. That being said, you still have to manage those applications and your access to those applications and make sure that they're being done securely. Or more importantly, if you're using an application that's maybe not part of the, the big 20, IT firms or cybersecurity firms or, providers that are out there, you can ask the question. And I have clients all the time that will go to their vendors or their application developers and ask them for, their system security plan, or, if they're compliant with SOC 2 or something like that. And that will give you a level of comfort and a level of security, reasonable level of security with using other applications. Hopefully that answers your question. If not, I'm more than happy to follow up more at the end. So where to start? And that's one of the big questions I get especially from small businesses. This is overwhelming. There's stuff in the news all the time. There's all these companies out here. I talked to this company and it was going to cost me $50,000 to come in and check out my security posture, do these audits, do all these things or whatever. I don't have those resources. Is there anything I can do? And unfortunately, most of them walk away before they even ask that question, but there are things you can do. There's things that you can do from a internal perspective. There's self-assessments. There are public, and I'll share at the end, there are publicly available. So the same exact security controls and the audit requirements that any company comes in. I don't care if that's Innovation Orange or it's Mandiant or one of the big ones. Everybody that comes in, those security controls for everything, the compliance requirements, basic security, any of those things are publicly available to you. You do not have to pay for any of them, none of them. And you can go through that same self-assessment that another company would come out and do for you yourself, if you have the time, if you have the resources to be able to do it. Where the value add is of having another company is you're bringing in somebody that is maybe understands the security controls better, can provide you recommendations, can give you some data to work with if you're not familiar. But you do have access to at least review and look at the same types of things that they have. And that's what you would get for a self-assessment. The second part of that is having a cybersecurity professional company and cybersecurity professionals come in and kind of hold your hand, walk you through the assessments, provide you, a gaps analysis, where you're good, where you're doing really well, where you're not, where you got some gaps, and help you come up with solutions to resolve those gaps. Understanding, and this is key for businesses, no matter what industry, nobody's perfect. You can't be perfect. You can't afford to be perfect. There's too much stuff out there. There's too many options. But what you can do is identify risk and where is your highest level of risk and focus on specific areas. It's kind of take it in bite-sized chunks. Don't try to protect everything all at once. And that's what, having a third party, can help you kind of determine where that risk really lies and help you come up with solutions to do that. And then obviously, once you understand the gaps, you work towards those solutions. You work towards remediation and you work towards resolving, whatever those things are. Could just be policies, and putting policies together. Could be technical implementations, but you work with, a partner or internally, depending on your organization, to, find the remediation for those things. IoT comes into play very much in this, and we've helped a lot of companies recently with IoT devices because, identifying what IoT devices they have in their environment sometimes is hard. They don't realize that, oh, wow, I do have a TV and it's got Netflix, it's got it's a smart TV, that's IoT, at the lowest level, but it is. And those are access points. Those are things that you have to account for on your network. So having, taking the assessment and tying it and really kind of taking a broad look at your environment and figuring out where those risks are, will help you kind of bring it to a palatable, space to do remediation. And then once you remediate, nothing, what's safe today is not safe tomorrow, right? That's why we have Patch Tuesday and that Microsoft pushes out, or Apple pushes out an update. Apple just released a 0-day, a high critical vulnerability in their iOS and their iOS app yesterday, and they immediately pushed out a patch overnight, an update overnight. What was secure 2 days ago wasn't secure yesterday. So continuous monitoring is hugely important. Once you fix something, you got to maintain that fix. So let's talk about the incident response plan. This is the basis, and this does not have to be a 400-page document that covers every possible solution and incident that you can imagine and everything. But just knowing if something happens, what do you do? Because in the heat of the moment, more often than not, mistakes get made. You forget to contact people. You forget to. I had a company, unfortunately, last year that happened over the weekend. They called all these people in. Everybody was running around and reacting, and they did all of this work. One, they ended up destroying a lot of evidence, and two, they ended up hiring and bringing in us to help them, and then they paid a small amount for us to get started, and then didn't contact their insurance company until 2 days later, even though we did advise them to. And their insurance company would not cover any of the initial costs for them because they weren't notified first. So, understanding what those requirements are, who do you need to contact first? Who are your critical people? Who do you go? Being organized in the heat of the battle is key to being able to recover quickly and avoid some of these costs that we've talked about. The incident response plan, it's a living document. The main point of it identifies your people, the partners, your basic procedures, and if required, any tools that you will use, which often will fall on an incident response team, to start to address and understand, identify, and recover from an incident. And just having an outline. I've seen incident response plans that are a page and a half, and I've seen incident response plans that are 40, 50 pages long for larger companies. But just having something, thinking through, if this happens, if we lose access, take your most critical system and say, what happens to the company if we lose access to that for a day? What would we do? And just bulletize it. That's how you get started creating that, and it'll evolve, and you'll get more details, and you'll get more information, and you'll just keep working on that and building it. It should be something, at minimum, should be reviewed once a year. Hopefully you don't have to review it more than that, because that means you didn't have an incident. But even if you don't have an incident, review it. I had a customer one time that we had an incident, and we went to their incident response plan, and every single person that they were supposed to contact was no longer either with the company, no longer with the insurance company, none of the contacts, none of the systems were accurate because it hadn't been updated in like 2 or 3 years because nobody had looked at it. So it's a living, breathing document. Your key points to the IR plan are the people, identifying the leadership, your key stakeholders. If something happens, who are the key people that need to know about it? Your IT team, security team. This could be a managed service provider. It could be, your one help desk guy, whoever, is tied to, that knows and has knowledge of your IT system. For a small company, I've seen that be the CEO. He built everything. That could be him. But just identifying those people, your partners. And this is important for the simple fact that, one, we talked about insurance and how important that is if you have it. Legal counsel can be huge. Unfortunately, I have yet to see a company go through a ransomware attack or a cyber attack without being sued on the other end by a partner, a vendor, a customer, anything like that. So having legal counsel, at least as an advisor, is huge. because they will protect you from the ins and outs. The other thing is there's different cybersecurity laws in different states, and they will know what those are, and they will know what you're required to do. One of the things that we fight all the time is, oh, I got attacked. I want to do the right thing. I want to let my customers know. I want to let my partners know so that they are aware. And what the legal counsel will tell you is not yet. Let's get all the information. Don't rush out there and do that, because you set yourself up for exposure. And they will guide you. Like I said, even if they're not full-time part of the incident, somebody, a legal counsel that is experienced in cybersecurity or a breach counselor is huge. A lot of times your insurance company will provide that for you. So it may not be even at an additional cost, but making sure you have that, because it is, unfortunately, I don't want to say 100%, because it's not like I do every incident response in the world, but more often than not, there is some legal repercussions. You kind of get attacked twice, which is terrible, but that's just welcome to the society we live in nowadays. Identifying the processes. This is the thing that is hugely important, right? Knowing what those processes, if something happens, what are you going to do? So that it's outlined, it's available, you can go through it, because you're not going to think straight in the heat of the moment when your business just went down. I don't care who you are, you're going to miss something. Having that outline. And then again, it's about some of the tools and stuff, which some of that will fall on the incident response team and things like that. So it's all about being prepared. So again, when it all hits the fan. So let's just talk real briefly about insurance and legal counsel, because I know I've addressed that several times, and just kind of go through. These are some of the key things that cyber insurance will do for you, and some of the key things that you need to ask your cyber insurance company before you need them. Understand your coverage. What is covered, because again, not all insurance, cyber insurance is created equal. It by no means. And so a lot of times people think things are covered and they don't. So it's no different than your home insurance. It's no different than your car insurance, like making sure you truly understand what's covered and what's not. Understand the role of the insurance company. Some of the insurance companies, they want to be your first call, and then they will assign a breach counselor. They will assign an incident response team. They will take care of everything in-house and do it for you. Some just want to be notified and let them know when you're done. Knowing what that role is huge. Words have meanings. Again, when you start getting into these things, you talk about attorney-client privilege, you talk about words like breach versus incident, recovery versus remediation, like using these words outside of your environment with another person or another company, they have legal ramifications and legal meanings that you have to be aware of. And these are things that nobody thinks about when it's all going down. And so just taking time before something happens is huge. Time to respond. One of the downsides, and you got to ask the insurance company, I've seen insurance companies that want to run everything, but they're backlogged, so they can't get to your incident for a week. Well, what's that? That's not manageable most of the time, right? Being down for a week while you're waiting for the insurance company is not manageable. Knowing that up front and working through that with the insurance company prior is huge. You don't want to find out that you're in a queue on hold while your business is impacted and down. What's your remediation coverage? The other thing that they will do is, they will support some of the costs to improve your security based off of the evidence from the breach, understanding if they'll do that. And then knowing the difference between a cyber insurance vendor and an insurance company that has cyber insurance is also very huge. There are specific insurance companies that they specify and they specialize in cyber insurance versus, your car insurance company that has a cybersecurity or cyber insurance plan on there, and knowing the differences to there. The attorney or a breach counselor or whatever will help you make sure that you are covered through attorney-client privilege. They'll make sure that the government, the federal or state governments are notified appropriately. Make sure that your vendors are notified, but notified in a way that protects you. Same with your clients. They'll also act as an intermediary between you and the incident response team, the insurance company, anything like that. And they will also help you with, preparations and things like that to understand, where some of the gaps are. So again, they do, unfortunately, and I'm not and I have some really good lawyers, that legal counsel that we work with on IRs, and they're amazing. But I tell them all the time, like, I hate lawyers. Once the lawyers get involved, the things start getting really expensive, and and then you gotta watch what you say and how you say it, and dot your I's and cross your T's. And to me, they complicate everything. But they do, at the end of the day, if they do their job, they do protect the business and the business owners from again, the what I call the double attack. So let's talk about some of the types of incidents that you have to be aware of. And again, it's coming from all sides. You have accidents. I have been called into IRs on Saturday night at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. My gosh, we've got an incident, and after a day or, so of investigation, realize that, nah, you guys deployed a new tool and it screwed up your environment. And yeah, this isn't a real incident. This is an accident that happened. But the impact is the same. The impact, even if it's an accident, is still the same. You have ransomware, which we're all very well aware of, and we hear about it, unfortunately, almost every day. You've got what I call drive-by attacks. Those are the ones that, so when you put something on the internet, if it's accessible to the internet, it is being probed 100% guaranteed without fail. If it touches the internet, somebody is scanning it, somebody is looking for a vulnerability, somebody is looking for a way in. You're not targeted. It's not, they don't care about your company. They don't care about you. They don't care anything. You put something on the internet that's exploitable and that they can gain access and potentially do some stuff with. I will tell you, just as a test, I stood up a web server, put it out on Amazon, and within 5 minutes, it was the amount of traffic that was going to it, that was scanning it, looking for open ports and open applications and things like that. It just was continuous after that, 100% of the time. So those are those drive-by attacks. There's targeted attacks. You have competitors, you have ex-employees that have a grudge. You're in an industry that is targeted. You work in the SCADA or industrial control or or healthcare. During COVID, healthcare was a big one. They went after all the healthcare because they knew they were just too busy to care and to pay attention. And then there's espionage, which again, generally you don't see as much at the lower, at the smaller business, level. But if you got a product, you've got a device, you've got technology that's cutting edge, that's new. And I know in Riot, we have a lot of partners here that are doing amazing cutting edge stuff, but they're still small companies. Well, you've got something that other people want. Espionage comes into play. It's not just for the CIA. It happens even at that level. And those things all can happen from employees, past or present, criminals, vendor supply chain compromises. Again, think about it. If you get compromised, your vendors, your partners are potentially impacted. Well, everybody you're connected to, if they get compromised, you are potentially impacted or affected by it. And then you have the insider threat, which is you have an employee that you don't, that's unhappy, that has certain accesses, that is planning on leaving. It happens, unfortunately, again, all the time. Interesting fact, it's actually kind of just put out there, but this is true. 99% of all the hacking is not as cool as it looks like on TV. It's not crazy. A lot of the time it's through social engineering. It's through tricking you to do something, calling you, texting you, emailing you, and everything, and that gets them their initial access. So again, it's not always the technology. It is very much making sure your users, your staff, your employees are aware of these types of things, and that's where user awareness training comes into play, and things like that. Couple of facts, and I know I want to get wrapped up here, so there's plenty of time for questions, but a couple of facts around ransomware. One, ransomware is a service. So it's a business. It's not like a bunch of rogue guys and girls that are just trying to do stuff and make money. There are nation state funded ransomware groups. We all know what's going on out in Ukraine and with Russia and everything. Russia is a huge sponsor of ransomware groups, and with all of the financial impacts that are happening into that country, they are using some of that to try to facilitate some revenue generation. But it is a full-blown service. To understand how a ransomware group works, it works like a fine-tuned company. You have basically the EAs, you have administrators, you have negotiators, you have your operators, you have the financial transactions, your CFO type people, you have your CEO type people. These organizations are extremely structured and organized. You have your tool developers. If you look at any large business and then you take the structure of what these ransomware groups, they're not these rogue, just bunch of people running around just trying to do bad things. They're very, very, very well organized. They have a separate bureau, most of them. And again, there's been some changes in a couple of the groups, but they have a separate group of people that handles all the finance. So I mean, that's how organized they are, right? We provide all the services, and then boom, we send you over to our finance department. Literally, they have a finance department that handles all the transactions. It's a huge business. That's a great question on the how many don't return your data, and I will definitely address that here in just a second, because that is a great question and something that people might be a little bit surprised about. The best time, the most predominant time we see these ransomware attacks, it's not 9 to 5. Sorry, none of this happens when it's convenient. It happens on, and as an incident response person, and Noel, who's on the call, is an incident response person, we will tell you, none of this happens Monday through Friday between 8 and 5 p.m. It always happens at midnight, the weekend, holidays, anytime that you want personal time, that's when it happens. So, and we tell everybody that when they come on the incident response team is, I hope you don't have a social life, because it will be unproductive for a while on there. A lot of times, if you're doing acquisitions, if you were acquired or are acquiring companies, as soon as you put out that public release or that public statement, or it's put out there, it's publicly known that one company was bought by another, I promise you, you are being social engineered. You are going to be, tested in some way, shape, or form because of the craziness that goes on during an M&A process. And again, now we're seeing this. It's credit card size. They literally will take a credit card. Most of them still like Bitcoin, but if anybody follows the market, Bitcoin kind of stinks right now. So they literally will do credit card size purchases. They'll either take a credit card or, they'll go and say, hey, go buy this much Bitcoin with a credit card or whatever and do it. And the reason is because most companies are going to go, you know what, I'll just pay $6,000 and attempt to get my data back, which is what we'll talk about here in a second. If you want to really understand, and this was put out by one of our legal teams that we work with to try to identify and kind of comprehend what an actual cost of an attack outside of the ransomware payment, but just a cost of an attack could cost, is you can take your annual revenue of your company divided by the annual work days, and then you sit down and you break it down to, how many days can your business be down or impacted, and figure out what that cost would be. I will tell you, on average, even for I'll say 50 person to 200 person company, you're down for 30 days. That's a good scenario on average. Most of them, I see 45 days as being a more realistic number. So I don't know what your business, revenue is. I hope it's a ton of money. I hope you guys are all rocking and rolling, but you know what it is. Plug those numbers in and tell me, and you can determine what 30 days of being down potentially would do for you. Now, all the things we talked about earlier, incident response plan, knowing your legal, knowing your insurance, knowing your legal, having those pre-assessment, all those things can help shorten that timeline. And that's why doing that work up front really does pay dividends in the event of a compromise. So I'll answer the fraction, or what fraction of ransomware attacks don't return your data after payment. I will tell you that all ransomware groups will return your data if you pay the ransom. There is honor among thieves. They will return your data if you pay the ransom. I've never seen a ransomware group not pay or not return the encryption key so that you could have access to your data if you make the payment. Now, the caveat to that is they don't do a very good job making these tools and doing these and creating these encryption. They tend to use their own encryption algorithms instead of well-known. And so 65% of your data is what you can expect to actually be able to decrypt successfully. And that's an average number, but that's a solid number. So it's not about they'll give you the key, they'll give you the data, but only expect that you'll probably be able to successfully decrypt about 65% of the data. The second part of that is, and this has changed in the past year. There used to be a significant honor among thieves where they would take your data, you would get a nasty note on a computer or an email that says, we own your data, pay us, log into this, dark website, pay us our ransom, we'll give you the decryption key, and we won't release your data. If you don't, we're going to release your data. And up until about a year ago, 99-point-something% of the time, that was a valid fact. If you paid the ransom, they would give you the data and your data never got released. Now, did they delete it? I can't tell you. Is it not there for them to go back to? There's no indication that they do actually delete it, but I have never seen them, I never saw them actually still give it out. Over the past year, I have seen them double dip, in which case they will give you your data back with a decryption key, and then they'll turn around and release your data or sell your data, through one of their, shaming sites or their dark web, auction sites on there. So I've seen that now in two specific incidents that we did, that they ended up paying the ransom, and then their data still ended up getting out there. The other thing with ransomware is once you've been attacked with ransomware once, expect to be attacked again within 6 months, if not sooner. I've seen them try to get back in within 2 weeks, but because you are now a known viable target that they made money off of, and like any sales company, if you find somebody that buys something from you once, why not go back and see if you can get them to buy from you again? And they will come after you again and again until they decide to move on and they can't be successful. So I have unfortunately witnessed organizations that didn't take the right remediation steps or the right remediation steps quick enough, and they got attacked. They got attacked a second time within 30 days, actually, on both of those. So those are some of the ins and outs of ransomware. And that's why it is really important to, when you're dealing with ransomware, to get some professionals, incident response team, the insurance, whatever, to really help guide you through that, to try to minimize, at best, hopefully eliminate the possibility of that happening again. And lastly, here are a few resources. Again, there's a vast amount. Google search, you can find a ton of these. These are ones that I like to refer to. NIST in and of itself basically creates all the compliance security controls. They are the standard. So they have a website that basically has their framework and stuff on there so you can look at. CISA, DHS CISA is become huge in supporting the private sector and providing resources for self-assessments and things like that. They also put out a ton of great information on current trends, things that are going on, and stuff like that. They do an amazing job up there. I've been fortunate to work with them. And then there's just sites that, if you just want to see what's going on, which sometimes you argue whether you really want to know or if it's easier just to kind of keep the blinders on. But there's a couple of, obviously the FBI puts out a lot of good stuff of really critical. CISA does. Bleeping Computer is actually a great resource and probably a much easier read than CISA and the FBI or whatever on just trends that are stuff going on. And then obviously I had to put a shameless plug. Innovation Orange is obviously available for any type of support, and this is what we do as well on there as an additional resource. And this is just a couple of, if you go to the NIST site, you can see you've got examples of the framework, the different versions to walk you through. CISA's got this. You got a lot of downloadable resources for cyber resiliency. Again, I would strongly recommend before you call any third-party company to help you, take a little bit of time and try to do some of it yourself. The other thing is know what you're doing. So when a third-party company comes in to help you, you know what they're talking about, and you know that you're getting the support that you need. And then again, CISA puts out some stuff to help you kind of evaluate your exposure to ransomware and things like that. And that is it. I know I was trying to wrap up at 1:45, but I still have 10 minutes for any questions and anything that I can answer that I didn't cover.
Pete, thanks so much. Really good stuff. As if business owners didn't have enough to keep them up at night, but thank you for sharing your knowledge and your resources. We do have a few questions in the chat that I'll just run us through. And then, folks, if you have other questions, please add them to the chat, or I'll give you a chance to unmute and ask. So Camelia asked, any cautionary tales about smaller companies that don't pay the ransom? Are they ruined forever?
If they don't pay the ransom, their stuff, they will get, all their data will get released. What I've seen more predominantly is I've seen there are groups that will go on and they'll expose that information via Twitter, and they'll let people know that you've been compromised. And what ends up happening is that, again, partners, clients, vendors, things like that may hear about it. And then that may create a reputation issue more than anything for you, because it kind of circles from, it's not just sitting out there on the dark web, they kind of bring it to the forefront. I don't want to scare anybody and say, no, I've seen them all go out of business. I've seen mostly reputation become an issue in situations like that if they didn't pay the ransom. The other thing is, if you don't pay the ransom and they put it out there, whatever data they got is out there for every other ransomware group, every other militia, anybody else surfing the dark web, which the only reason to do that is bad stuff. So like anybody else is out there. So the key in a situation like that, if you're going to choose to not pay the ransom, and I'm a big proponent of not paying if you can avoid it for the obvious integrity reasons, is that understand and treat all of your information as it has been compromised, and be very proactive in, resetting any accounts, eliminating information, redoing accounts, reaching out to vendors, reestablishing relationships, and kind of starting over again on all of that stuff, because you have to assume that somebody else is also seeing that.
Great, thanks, Pete. Barbara asked, how vulnerable are websites built on WordPress or WooCommerce? That's what many of us are using for e-commerce.
So WordPress suffers from the Microsoft syndrome. And I say that, and I'll explain why. Microsoft is the most predominant operating system out there, right? So it has inherently the most visibility over people developing exploits and attacking them and going after, those. WordPress arguably is one of the most predominant, web applications out there. And so it can be very secure if the person monitoring and or managing it is, knows what they're doing and make sure that they lock it down. Things like web application firewalls and things like that can be very, very helpful and make WordPress very secure. That being said, WordPress has so much integration, so much functionality that it is also very easy to make it not secure.
Cool. And I know you addressed some of Jennifer's question earlier, but anything to add on the question around, are there apps that are less susceptible to cybersecurity attacks?
I would say that there's no apps that I can come out and say that are less susceptible. I will tell you that the application developers as a whole have put a lot, there's been a huge transition. They used to be terrible. Have put a lot of work into security, because of their reputation and use. That being said, most of the application compromises I've seen is because of the way that the user applied the application or set up their access to the application. Is that the user, the application in and of itself, they've come a long way and are relatively secure, and most of them, for at least the more predominant applications or stable applications, they have their own security teams that are testing their and applying patches and doing that. So I'd say as a whole, I think applications are very secure. It's really the users that are using the application that potentially create the exposure.
Great. And Jennifer also asked, how do you price your services for monitoring, business type, number of users, et cetera?
Yeah, great question. So one of the things that we do is we focus very much on small businesses. So we have packages for different types of monitoring, and from basic to kind of what we call our compliance monitoring, which kind of covers all those things we talked about in the beginning, right? We can do the backups for you, we can do all these things. We have it priced down to literally, I think the last time we kind of we kind of laid it out, it almost comes out to about $1 a day for the basic monitoring per system. And we don't have any limits. I know some of the bigger vendors will have a limit. If you have less than 100 computers, you're kind of outside of their clientele. Whatever we have customers that are 3 computers. I think 3 is the smallest that we have, up to 1,200, 1,500, and we have solutions that kind of fall in line with that.
Thanks, Pete. And then Scott asked, what fraction of ransomware attacks exfiltrate your data versus just encrypting it?
They all do both now. They all will. So the first step that they will do is compress it. They won't encrypt it, but they'll compress it and exfiltrate it and then encrypt it. I haven't seen any over the past 3 years that have not done both. Now, what I have seen is their encryption fail. Again, instead of using a well-known encryption method, they'll try to get creative and create their own. And I have seen some where they will fail. And so they'll exfiltrate the data and maybe only some of your systems get encrypted.
Wonderful. And I know we're coming up on the hour. Any final questions for Pete? All righty then. Well, Pete and Ken's contact information, of course, is right here on the screen, and this will go up on YouTube right after the session for your reference. Pete, thank you so much. Such a wealth of information. Appreciate your time and expertise today.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And thank you guys for taking the time to attend.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.